William Holden was a movie star. Whether playing the handsome romantic lead or the world-weary cynic, he was a performer who brought a unique personal quality to his roles that could not be duplicated. Throughout his career, he was considered Hollywood's golden boy.
Bill always referred to his acting as that he could interpret sort of every man, and that he brought a sort of honest, human, approachable interpretation to all the roles he played.
It's a wonder that he didn't earn more Oscars in his lifetime.
He just has a naturalness about him that you don't feel that he's acting. He's just in the character and in the moment. I thought, as an actor, he was just wonderful.
He was great. He was terrific. There was no temperament or anything like that.
If you don't want to tell me, why don't you tell Hoffy or security?
Yeah. Security.
William Holden began acting at Paramount Studios as a contract player. He spent over 10 years building a career to become the heir to the mantle of the great American leading man. Making over a dozen films for the studio, he would become one of Paramount's biggest movie stars.
Kiss me, David.
Love to, Sabrina.
He was born William Franklin Beadle, Jr., in Fallon, Illinois, in 1918. His father was a chemist, his mother was a school teacher, and he was the eldest of 3 sons. In 1921, the Beadle family moved from the Midwest to the sleepy city of Pasadena, California.
He was extremely physical. He had been a gymnast in school. He had tremendous strength and dexterity, and at one point on a dare, he walked on his hands across the bridge in Pasadena, which they used to call Suicide Bridge because during the Depression, so many people jumped off it. So that's how physical he was, and that's how in what great shape he was.
In 1936, William Beadle graduated from South Pasadena High School with a notable lack of scholastic honors. Bill became involved with the Pasadena Workshop Theater. It so happened that a Paramount talent scout was in the audience on opening night.
Milton Lewis went out to the Pasadena Community Playhouse to catch a play one night and saw all the cast, and one person stood out. This man was playing a part of an 80-year-old man. And he went backstage, and this 80-year-old man was really 19 years old. So Milton brought him to the studio. They tested him, came out fine. They put him under contract.
Paramount executives took issue with the young actor's last name.
They didn't think that William Beadle was such a good name for the marquee, and they changed his name to William Holden.
In 1938, the newly named William Holden found himself assigned to a promising group of young players who were being groomed for stardom by the studio. They were called the Golden Circle.
If you were really somebody that they were going to groom heavily, they put you in the Golden Circle and you were in movie magazines and they publicized you. And they really promoted people because you were an investment for them. You were their possession. They owned you and they could do with you as they saw fit. They paid very little, but they gave you lots of work.
Ironically, it was not Paramount which offered Bill his first major role. Over at Columbia, the search was on for a new face.
William Holden is thrust into stardom very quickly at a very young age in 1939 in the film Golden Boy. Golden Boy is a typical 30s Depression-era story by Clifford Odets about a struggling young poor boy who will do almost anything to make it to the top.
Columbia head Harry Cohen knew he needed to take action. Aware that he had a bright young star on his hands, Cohen bought half of Holden's contract from Paramount.
It was a bargain because Bill was not getting very much money at the time.
For almost a decade, Paramount and Columbia would share the handsome leading man.
William Holden entered into a kind of strange relationship in Hollywood. He had a split contract where he was shared 50-50 by Paramount, one of the big 5, one of the leading companies in Hollywood, and Columbia, a studio that really specialized in B films.
William Holden's first starring role for Paramount was the period drama Those Were the Days. He played a campus prankster in a script based on George Fitch's stories about college life in the early 1900s. The film's main publicity gimmick was the kiss between Holden and Bonita Granville. It would be the first screen kiss for the former child actress. His second film for Paramount was the wartime melodrama I Wanted Wings, a cinematic salute to the Army Air Corps. The movie co-starred Ray Milland and newcomer Veronica Lake.
There's an irony in this and all of Holden's films about World War II because Holden's brother was an actual fighter in World War II. He was a naval flyer, and his plane crashed and he was killed during the war.
William Holden's poise and assurance before the camera were noticeably improving. It was apparent that Holden was a naturally talented actor who could deliver great performances despite limited technical experience.
Yeah, I loved her.
In 1941, Holden met the young actress Brenda Marshall. She was an attractive brunette with natural acting talent. On July 13th of that same year, they flew to Las Vegas, Nevada, and tied the knot. The following year, Holden would make 2 films for Paramount Studios. Both pictures would be completely different.
When you were under contract in the classic Hollywood studio system, you were often asked to do a great variety of roles. You made a war picture one day, a few months later you might be making a Western, and then you'd be cast in a musical. William Holden's musical was The Fleet's Inn in 1942 with Dorothy Lamour. This movie was the screen debut of Betty Hutton, who by the end of the 40s would be the leading musical star in the Paramount stable.
Oh, goodbye, baby.
Goodbye, darling.
Goodbye, honey. I'll be back in 2 months.
I'll be waiting for you, now that you've asked me.
The Remarkable Andrew is a strange fantasy that Holden did for Paramount, written by Dalton Trumbo. The Remarkable Andrew is about an ordinary guy, a clerk, falsely accused of corruption, who becomes involved through fantasy with historical figures who come to his defense and help him out in his modern-day situation.
What's that, sir? Hang 'em!
In 1942, Holden put a hold on his acting career and decided to enlist in the armed services. He graduated from the Army Air Force Candidate School and for the next 3 years did stateside entertainment and public relations duty. When Holden reported back to Paramount Studios in September of 1945, he found that he had slipped into obscurity. When he tried to walk through the studio's front gate, Holden was immediately stopped. The security guard didn't know who he was. Holden returned to a studio system only marginally less restrictive than the military. He would spend the next 5 years starring in roles which did not challenge him. He called these light and breezy performances the Smiling Jack roles.
Holden's first film after returning from World War II was Blaze of Noon for Paramount in 1947. He plays a flyer again, this time an early airmail flyer. He co-stars with Ann Baxter and also with William Bendix and Sterling Hayden. Blaze of Noon was not a big success, but his next film for Paramount, Dear Ruth, was a huge hit that spawned 2 sequels. Holden and his co-stars Joan Caulfield and Billy DeWolf were re-teamed in the sequel, Dear Wife, in 1949.
This is kind of tough to explain.
Albert, would you mind terribly?
No. He might as well hear this. I'm running for the state senate.
What?
In Streets of Laredo in 1949, William Holden goes back out west.
Amigo?
He is again co-starring with William Bendix.
So help me God.
What's really distinctive about this picture, though, is the beautiful Technicolor cinematography.
Let's go, amigo.
Holden was biding his time, hoping for a particular movie that would demonstrate his genuine personality as an actor and as a man. Fortunately, with some help from a famous director, he found the part he was looking for.
Billy Wilder and Bill Holden were both under contract at Paramount, so it was inevitable that they would meet. They admired each other's work, and Billy always said, well, I'll get a role for you, Bill, and he did, with Sunset Boulevard, which was really a milestone in Bill's career because it proved that he could be a serious actor.
Even though Wilder was a hot director at Paramount, Hollywood's usual top-liners were not exactly scrambling for the part of the unsavory, weak-willed Joe Gillis.
The part that William Holden plays in the picture was written for Monty Cliff. And Monty Cliff read the final script and decided he didn't want to play a gigolo who was living with a has-been star. So he passed, and Bill Holden was under contract here, and he wasn't assigned to a picture, and he did it.
I put him on my massage table in front of the fire. He always liked fires and poking at them with a stick.
Drawn into the orbit of the demented film star Norma Desmond, unredeemed by the love of a good woman, Holden incarnated Joe Gillis from the inside out. Best of all was his measured delivery of the droll post-mortem narration.
The poor dope. He always wanted a pool. Well, in the end, he got himself a pool. Only the price turned out to be a little high.
William Holden received an Academy Award nomination for his work in Sunset Boulevard. The character of Joe Gillis would launch Holden's career to a whole new level. During the next several years, Holden would make 3 movies for the Paramount Studios. These films continued the string of routine roles he had been making before his turn in Sunset Boulevard. In the films Union Station and Submarine Command, Holden was reunited with his wholesome co-star Nancy Olson. Their pairing in Sunset Boulevard was considered a great success, but unfortunately their on-screen chemistry failed to excite audiences.
Holden makes another crime drama in 1952 for Paramount, The Turning Point, co-starring Edmund O'Brien.
Is it important to you?
Yes, it is.
You're the boy in the sun now, huh?
Maybe I am, Johnny. But something occurs to me. Even allowing for the apathy of the people and their lack of integrity and their occasional lack of intelligence. And that's the fact that they all want desperately to believe in a certain majesty of the law.
In some ways, it seems like his career is slipping back into its pre-Sunset Boulevard phase, where he's doing pretty ordinary films on assignment for the studio. However, Billy Wilder will ride to the rescue again.
Wilder had promised Holden that he would find another project worthy of his abilities at the first opportunity. He kept his promise in 1953 with the prison film Stalag 17.
You listen to me! What do you think the chances are of getting out of here? And let's say you make it to Switzerland. Let's say to the States. So what? They ship you out the Pacific, slap you in another plane, you get shot down again, only this time you wind up in a Japanese prison camp. That is, if you're lucky. Well, I'm no escape artist. Cigar, Cookie. You can be the heroes. The guys with fruit salad on your chest. Me, I'm staying put.
Holden would win his first and only Academy Award for his vital and blistering rendition of the cocky, self-serving individualist Sefton.
There are 2 guys in this barracks that know I didn't do it. Me and the guy that did do it. And it could be any one of you.
Bill wasn't the first choice of Billy Wilder's for the lead role in Stalag 17. Charlton Heston was up for it. Charlton Heston was pretty hot at the time. Fortunately for Bill, Heston was tied up because he had contracts with several studios. Bill went to see the play in New York, and he walked out after the first act. He didn't like it at all. So he went back to Hollywood and told Billy about his disappointment in the play, and Billy said, forget about the play, the movie's gonna be different. And of course, Bill wouldn't turn down any chance to work with Billy Wilder again.
In many ways, William Holden was a perfect leading man for Billy Wilder. Wilder is so cynical in his dialogue, he's fascinated by corruption, and it seems to be that William Holden was able to bring out in his personality that corrupt and cynical side, and the collaboration between Wilder and Holden was incredibly fruitful.
Why, I'll kill you for that! Shut up!
They were so inseparable at one point that Wilder began a sentence, if I were you, and I am. That's how close they were at the time that they were making this film. Bill Holden was nominated for Best Actor for Stalag 17, and he did in fact win. And unfortunately, his wife made a point of mentioning on the way home, well, you know, Bill, you didn't win for this, they're just giving it to you for Sunset Boulevard. which he didn't win for.
They wound up having an argument because she had said something derogatory about whether or not he deserved it, and he crashed his car, and so it sort of took the joy out of the actual award.
By the end of 1953, Stalag 17 had become one of the biggest box office earners of the year.
It made $10 million, which sounds like a puny amount today, but in those days, it was huge. And it got great reviews, particularly for Bill Holden, doing a different kind of character, totally divorced from the Smiling Jacks that he had played in movie after movie. So this was a real step forward for Bill Holden in his career.
The next film that Holden did for Paramount was Forever Female, in which he took the role of a young playwright trapped between two enamored women played by Ginger Rogers and Pat Crowley.
It was a theatrical piece, very Broadway-oriented. I hadn't met Bill Holden until the actual first day of shooting. And he was kind of an angry guy in the role. I mean, the role was that of an angry playwright questioning everything and trying to please Ginger Rogers, and I'm just throwing myself at this man to get this job.
What about that sandwich and drink you invited me out for?
Get out!
He was great to play off. I loved him.
Also, I think you're a little touched. What's the matter?
That's a nice warm smile. I like it.
In 1954, Holden returned to Paramount to play a more light-hearted role. The classic romantic comedy would reunite him one last time with director Billy Wilder. Teamed with fellow Oscar winners Humphrey Bogart and Audrey Hepburn, Holden would play the role of the younger brother of a wealthy Long Island family in Sabrina.
Bill loved playing this playboy part because he had fun with it. He really did. They lightened his hair for the picture. So on the set once, and Bogey had this wonderful sense of humor, and he looked over at Holden, and they were now both rivals for the affection of Audrey Hepburn. And he said, "That William Holden, take a look at him." He said, "You know, if I were as handsome as Bill Holden, I would not have any doubts as to why Bacall married me."
Miss Hepburn played the bewitching Sabrina, the daughter of a wealthy family's chauffeur who hopelessly loves the prodigal son of the house. Holden portrays the playboy with zeal and lives only for fast cars, champagne, and a good time. During the filming, it seemed as though the two co-stars were taking their roles a bit too seriously.
Billy enjoyed the picture, even though they made his hair blonde, but he certainly enjoyed the proximity of Audrey Hepburn, with whom he was having a flaming romance at the time.
I think every man who ever worked with her must have been in love with her. And I'm sure Bill was.
Sabrina turned out to be one of the most popular films of 1954. Though billed under Bogart and Hepburn, Holden nevertheless shared in the warm reception. Holden also drew third billing after Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly in Paramount's The Country Girl, the film version of another Clifford Odets play. Under George Seaton's direction, Holden was extremely believable as the stage director who falls in love with the wife of an older actor struggling to make a comeback. One of Holden's more solid performances, he played the multi-layered role of a man who comes to realize the genuine qualities of a woman who he at first despises, then comes to respect, and finally adores.
Bill Holden was very right for it. This vital, bright, passionate director he played. I think their relationship between Grace and Bill was very, very professional, and I think they were very compatible, very compatible.
You think the understudy can play the matinee?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, he was a great-looking guy. He was not cocky. He was always very concerned, and he was always very anxious to know what the director wanted and so on, so that he was a caring actor. And caring actors are not usually very happy or too content. They always look back afterwards and say, could have done that a little bit better. Damn.
And this film is another success, popular with the critics, and it actually also becomes successful with the Academy. Grace Kelly wins Best Actress.
Holden had learned with Sabrina that the third role in a hit was better than the lead in a flop. At age 36, William Holden was on top of the world, The actor's interests also became diversified thanks to his close friendship with his favorite director.
Billy would fill Bill's head with stories about Europe, and it was principally Billy Wilder that influenced Bill to go out and travel and see the world and have experiences. And when Bill decided to actually move to Switzerland, Billy Wilder had said, "Well, I didn't tell you to move, I just said to go and travel."
For his next film, Holden was teamed with Grace Kelly in the war film The Bridges at Toko-Ri. This powerful drama was based on the novel by James Michener and focused on the conflicts of a pacifist lawyer after he is recalled by the Navy to fly dangerous bombing raids over Korea. In the film, Holden gets in a lot of physical action, which no doubt kept him in top physical shape.
Bridges of Toko-Ri, that was his favorite film, but he really was at a great moment in his life and his career and his masculinity. He was so gorgeous and so appealing. He brought so much life experience and humanity to that character while being very moral about his approach to the kind of sacrifices that men were making in Korea at that time.
Although we're only over the target about 30 seconds, it's a lifetime. They're just sitting there, waiting for us.
Throughout the 50s, Holden seemed to go from strength to strength. His string of box office successes was acknowledged by the Theater Owners of America, who voted William Holden the #1 money-making star of 1956.
He was the #1 box office star in the world. And it was then and there that Bill was able to say, "You're going to have to pay me $1 million, and I'm no longer under contract." That was the first time any actor had ever gotten $1 million for a movie.
I think we've got it made.
That same year, Holden returned to Paramount for the film The Proud and the Profane, a World War II melodrama in which he stars as a tough, mustached Marine officer who romances a sensitive Red Cross worker played by Deborah Carr.
And I suppose once you've found it, you can't be quite the same.
And to a lesser degree, I think that danger motivates some women in their relationship with some men. Like leaning over a precipice. They want to see just how far they can lean without falling. Sometimes a sentimental loyalty to the past pulls them back just in time and spoils all the fun.
William Holden had a real love of travel, and he maintained homes in both Europe and in Africa. And in the world of Susie Wong, he got to play in a story that was actually set in a distant location, this time Hong Kong. However, he took a lot of flack. This film comes out in 1960, and people at this point are saying he's too old to play these kinds of parts anymore.
And you're my first girl.
Golden Boy would first describe William Holden. Later, it would contradict him. Beneath his assured exterior, Holden was tense and inhibited. He increasingly relied on a few drinks in order to relax sufficiently for the all-pervading camera eye.
In the morning, like around the first set, which was 8:30 in the morning, maybe a 8:45, he'd call for Sugar, his valet. Sugar would come in and bring in this water glass that I thought was water, and it turned out it was straight vodka. And he would have that. I hadn't had my second cup of coffee yet.
Once in a while, I would be called into his dressing room, which was on the set, and we would run the lines. And I noticed on his dresser, very beautifully laid out, were all kinds of breath mints and sprays and Listerine and gargle, which later came out that he did have a problem at that point.
If the 50s were Holden's real golden age, the next decade added little to the luster. Perhaps the best proof of his durable allure is that it survived so many forgettable films. However, there were some bright spots in his work during the early 1960s.
So what you're asking me to do is to risk my life to get off a blacklist that I didn't deserve to be on in the first place.
In Paramount's spy yarn, The Counterfeit Traitor, Holden played an American-born Swedish national who does espionage work for British intelligence in Nazi Germany. His exceptional performance in the film reminded audiences and critics that he could still hold their attention with a powerful starring role.
All right, I made a mistake. But if they find that letter, it's my neck, not yours.
Holden was off the screen for the next 2 years, but in 1964 he was reteamed with Audrey Hepburn in the Paramount comedy Paris When It Sizzles.
Bang, bang, bang! That's where we were?
In the film, Holden and Hepburn are propelled into the frantic fantasy world of screenwriting, incorporating elements of romance, comedy, Western action, espionage, musicals, and anything else that could conceivably go into a picture. Unfortunately, the audiences weren't impressed with their cinematic reunion. By the summer of 1966, shortly after the Holden's silver anniversary, his wife filed for divorce. After 25 years, the image of the picture-perfect marriage could no longer be sustained. During this time, his detractors were hinting that Holden was paying too much attention to matters other than acting. In fact, he was devoting much of his time to his conservation work at the Mount Kenya Safari Club.
He was very interested in the animals in Africa, and he went over and started a safari club there, which became very, very famous.
He had become concerned about the diminishing herds in the late 50s and was fortunate enough to have gone to Kenya on a hunting safari with 2 friends, and it became the Mount Kenya Safari Club, which became the jewel in the crown of East Africa for visitors from all over the world. There are species of animals around today because of Bill. Well, for the last 9 years of his life, we traveled extensively together, yes.
By the 1970s, Holden was no longer a fresh face. But even when age and hardship cracked his good looks, he channeled the pain into a screen presence of enduring complexity.
William Holden's last film for Paramount comes out in 1981, S.O.B., directed by Blake Edwards. This film is a underrated, fabulous Hollywood spoof.
S.O.B. was great fun because he was working with so many friends. And of course, Blake and Julie were longtime friends of his, longtime friends of mine. And Blake has a lot of fun when he's filming, and I think they all had a great time.
Tragically, William Holden's career would come to a sad end in November 1981. The world-class actor died of blood loss after an accidental fall in his high-rise apartment on the seaside cliffs of Santa Monica.
Whoever your father is and whatever happened, I'll be eternally grateful. That is, if I can give you a lift.
William Holden's combination of stunning good looks, charisma, and sheer acting talent are unequaled. His characters epitomized the all-American man.
I think there was something very likable about him, approachable. He had a beautiful smile, but there was something real about him. He was a real guy. There was something you liked.
Well, I think that he is one of the most talented and gorgeous-looking leading men ever. I mean, to me, he set the standard.
Hello. Well, there hasn't been a welcome like that since Lindbergh landed in Paris.
Gosh, he became one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. And one of the most likable. Bill never changed.
Whatever character he was interpreting, he interpreted with a great deal of truth and with his own sense of honor. He was a very honorable man.
William Holden's film legacy is an unusual one for a major star, an anti-heroic presence that usually took a detour from self-serving to selfless. His portrayals seldom descended to self-pity or recoiled from the worst results of greed, superficiality, or cowardice. There's no doubt William Holden left behind an impressive list of film roles second to none, securing a lasting place in the pantheon of Paramount's leading men.